And what this video here is about, I'm going to share with you the 5 themes about this particular upcoming new moon on December 19th, 2025. It's funny because it's such a cloudy, dreary, ominous day here in Austin, Texas, where I live. And initially this morning, I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to wait till tomorrow to film the video because it'll be sunnier out. But what I realized is that this sort of tone is actually a perfect fit. It's a really good metaphor for the type of energy we're in right now, which can seem a little bit dreary and confusing. It's like we're waiting for the fog to lift in our life. You may have felt like you've been going through so many different challenges and lessons and, different, you've been having different insights about yourself, what's real for you, where you want to start to direct your focus for this next chapter of your life. And here we still sit after all that sorting out, all that healing, all that waiting. The energy still feels a little bit dreary, but that's okay. There's a purpose for that. And that's kind of what this video is going to be about. It's going to be about the 5 different themes associated with this new moon and how you can learn to work with this type of energy. This energy can teach us a lot about life, about happiness, and about manifestation when you learn to kind of take advantage of it and honor it for what it is. But here I have said basically still nothing. What I'll go ahead and do now is break it down as I always do into 5 more digestible, grounded themes that you can take to the bank and hopefully apply in your own life just to a great benefit. Theme number 1, projections of a creative mind. When we're so immersed in this type of energy, it can be uncomfortable, but it allows us to kind of see it for what it is. Oftentimes, the biggest challenges in our life are not what we think. And they're not nearly as bad as our mind can make it out to be. Our minds are so powerful. And it can take the most benign situation. And when we perceive it through the filters of our past, our conditioning, our wounds, it can seem like a big, scary monster. And this energy might be making your challenges seem bigger than they really are. And at first glance, it's concerning. Oh my God, I'm surrounded by challenges. But they can sometimes be so over the top that you finally look at them with more discernment, looking deeper. And when you can do that, you can see that there's not even a problem there to begin with. Years ago, I found my young son, Sebastian. He was like 3 or 4 at the time. And he was sitting at the bottom of our stairs. And he's very expressive. So he looked very clearly like he was like unhappy about something. So I was like, hey, Bash, what's going on, buddy? What's the matter? He sighed. He said, well, I want to go upstairs and get my toys. I said, okay, well, why don't you then? He kind of paused for a second. Then he looked up at me and he said, with a very serious look on his face, dinosaurs. I had to really hold back the laughter because I could tell it to him. It was it was a legitimate concern that if he was to go up the stairs, try to fetch his toys, he might have to have an unexpected encounter with a velociraptor or a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. I say that to you because a lot of times we're also guarded by these dinosaurs, by these phantoms of our mind. The things that you really want in life, love, happiness, success, abundance, excitement, passion, freedom, all these things are there. They're there. They're waiting for us. And what's standing in front of them oftentimes is not nearly what we imagine it to be. In fact, in the spiritual community, there's a term that's thrown around a lot. I use it as well. I don't even care for it. It's blocks. You probably said that before, right? I'd like to have more money, but I have abundance blocks. I'd like to pursue my passion of writing and creating YouTube videos, but I have these blocks, these self-worthy blocks. Blocks implies that there's a legitimate barrier standing between you and who you know yourself to be, keeping you stuck where you don't want to be, stuck in a situation that is beneath you, that is no longer appropriate for you. And sometimes during the new moons and during just the time we're living in is kind of a time of illumination of sorts, I would say. It's a unique period in human history where a lot of people are finally starting to kind of wake up to this discrepancy, meaning who they're acting like, the characters they're playing, the lives they're leading, and who they really are deep down in truth at the core. We're becoming aware of this discrepancy. You may have been, I bet you have, I bet you've been becoming aware of your own discrepancies and becoming aware maybe of your own callings and sense of purpose, sense of destiny, sense of your potential, things you want, ideas, visions for your future that light you up. But there's all these blocks. And right now, the blocks might seem blockier and more solid than ever. But this is good because maybe you'll see it for what it really is. Just a big old pufferfish. Nothing real. Dinosaurs. Nonsense. Phantoms of the mind. And this energy is a really good way to kind of explore that and really see just how strong your mind is. I have a very, very dear friend of mine that I haven't been talking to as often as an example of these phantoms. And for months, I was thinking like, man, you know what? I don't know if we're close friends anymore. I was wondering if he didn't want to be friends with me anymore. And I had all these ideas and all these theories about how I may have upset him and, this or that. And this sort of haunting idea that one of my closest friends no longer wants to be in their life, it literally kept me up at night for a while. I was talking about it with my wife constantly, and I was journaling about it, trying to get to the bottom of it. Finally, I just decided to reach out and kind of share it with him. And he said to me exactly, he said, I don't know even where you would have come up with that, Vic. How creative is what he said. I had built up this situation into such a monstrous block, you might say, that when I finally confronted it, when I finally talked to him, almost in an instant, all my theories just fell to the floor. And I felt like kind of like an idiot, honestly. But it was good. For one, there was no problem there like I thought. But two, I was shown once again just how powerful the mind is. And the thing is, if it's powerful in this regard, might it also work for us in a different way? Over the years, I've met a lot of very successful people who have done like big things in life and overcome a lot of their limitations. A lot of the people who I've met who are really successful weren't lucky, weren't talented, aren't like abnormally smart. Nothing on paper would indicate why they would have gotten to where they were. In fact, a lot of times they have had very, very challenging backstories. But the difference is they're all almost a little bit delusional. All of them really have learned how to harness the power of their mind to imagine not the million different ways of why they're going to fail, but why they're unstoppable, why they couldn't fail. And they have big dreams, and they use their brains to help them figure out how to get there, and they have. And that's kind of the cool thing about right now, where right now you might be seeing how the mind has been working for you or working against you, better put. But that begs the question, does it have to be that way? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Just that conversation with my friend, it was empowering. It made me realize wow, I've been wasting all this mental power, creating these projections. What if I used it to manifest my dreams, to figure out a way to get way up to the top of that mountain? It can be like that. But nonetheless, I say all this because it's a time of awakening. It's a time of realizing, seeing through falsehood, seeing through illusion, seeing just to the extent that our past can influence our perception of the now. And this awareness can cause us to start to break out of this sort of self-created prison. Theme number 2, I wrote down psychic nourishment. You might, it's kind of like they say young snakes, like little baby snakes, are more dangerous than the adult snakes. And you might wonder, why is that? Well, it's because baby snakes have not learned how to like regulate their venom. So they might bite your ankle just because you walk by, and they might expend all of their venom. And then of course you get sick. But an older snake has learned restraint. A lot of us, unfortunately, are like baby snakes in the term, in regards to our regulation of our psychic energy, of our creative energy. And it's to our defense, just maybe like those young little snakes. You know, I don't know about you, but I went through a lot of my life like unaware of my true creative potential. But throughout my own journey of healing and shadow work and all the stuff I'm sure you're into as well, I've been able to experience it in a very real and raw way. Creative energy is this powerful force of like psychic libido. That's what Carl Jung, he calls it libido, not to represent sexual energy, but to represent literally psychic life force, vital energy. And a lot of us have it in like big quantities, but have yet, like those young snakes, have not learned how to kind of regulate it, not learn how to like when to use it, when to not, when to hold back, when to go all in. So you might find yourself sort of in balance. You might find yourself with high highs, low lows. One day you're feeling on top of the world. Other times you're completely spent, unmotivated. This can manifest physically, where you wake up and you have lots of actual energy and you get a lot of things done, and you're kind of just zooming around and things are happening. And other times you're just like, ugh, you can barely get out of bed. Right now is a time where I think a lot of us would benefit from some psychic nourishment, which is a way of saying kind of letting our venom, letting our psychic reservoir replenish itself. And I don't know about you, but for me, I've observed reasons why I can sometimes overdo my creative energy. And I guess it's probably not important to get into all that, but you might have your own reasons as well. And I've learned fundamentally there's a difference between excitement and anxiety. Sometimes I will create out of anxiety. I will force things out of like these underlying fears. And that is what leads to imbalance. Because sometimes the right thing to do is nothing. A lot of spiritual people I've come across are doers. They're action takers. They like to do stuff. They like to feel accomplished. They like to be productive. And waiting, doing nothing, when things are unclear and foggy, is sometimes like the hardest thing to do. But unless our psychic reservoir is healthy and active and full, we don't even have access to the good ideas, the breakthrough ideas that can take us to the next level, that can allow you to actually manifest your what might feel like far-fetched dreams. A lot of times when someone has a dream or a vision or a goal, they see nothing but the gap. Here I am, here are my blocks, here's my limitations, and there's that thing, which seems like a fairy tale. And from here we can get kind of frantic, and we can try to make things happen, and we kind of, scurry around like those young snakes. And a lot of times all we really need to do is just chill and wait and trust that the way, the how can come to you. But you have to have like an open clear, healthy antenna. And this is something I've been guilty of as well. All this stuff I share, by the way, is not stuff I've mastered. It's stuff I like continue to learn over and over again. And I've been kind of functioning this way, as I mentioned, overworking, you might say, with my book. I've been trying to write a book, and I've been writing a book actually. And finally, like, I started to become increasingly fatigued, like mentally fatigued, creatively, like, writer's block, you might call it, but it was like a fatigue essentially. And just the other day, I chose to I used like willpower to not do anything, to just like not work, not create, not do. And I had the most productive day. Ironically, I had all these ideas. I had this one fundamental breakthrough idea about my book that's been kind of a solution to a problem I've had for this entire time. All of a sudden, it literally just popped in my brain. 2 words. These 2 words were like gifted to me by my, I don't know what, God, the universe, the creative forces, but they were just there in my conscious awareness when I finally gave myself a little bit of rest. So right now is a time of that it would be wise to do something like that. To know that even things aren't clear right now, you might benefit just as I did from a little bit of R&R. Number 3, it's a good time to stand up to your blocks. I mentioned earlier how it's a good time to kind of understand them and look at them. It's also a good time to make your move. Because when you start to look deeply at your blocks and see it's nothing but dinosaurs, nothing but smoke and mirrors, that's the time when the walls are kind of vulnerable and you have more freedom to break through them. And this can happen in very simple ways that most people don't even, think too deeply about. Like what comes to mind is when I joined a jujitsu gym. On one hand, I felt very inspired to learn this particular form of martial arts. There was a genuine resonance, a genuine passion. It was very authentic. And even when I would go to class, I would feel alive. I would feel like this is where I'm meant to be. It resonated. But every single day, like before like getting in my car and going to class, I would feel this heavy resistance. These blocks would come up. And for a while, I thought to myself, I have to get to the bottom of these. So I would get on my little notebook here and I would journal about them. And I had all sorts of theories and discoveries of like the origins of these blocks. But what I found is that no matter how much investigation I did, that energy that would fill up my body of anxiety, dread, fear, concern, worry, etc., it was always there. Always there, no matter what I did, no matter how puffed up I'd get myself, no matter how many affirmations or whatever I tried to do, visualization, there was always that fear, always that boogeyman standing between me and my car to go to jujitsu. And what I realized is that I was giving it too much power. And what I started doing is just going to class anyways. Okay, I'm terrified to go to class. Okay, fine. I'm smart enough to know that jiu-jitsu can be dangerous, but regardless, it's not really as dangerous as my mind has made it out to be. So I just kept going to class, going to class, going to class. And after about 3 months, I would say, I realized one day that fear was just gone. It wasn't because of any big breakthrough or earth-shattering realization about my core wounds, none of that. It was just gone. And now I'm going to class in like an hour, like about an hour from now, and I can't wait. There's no fear. It's actual excitement now. And I say that because you might have your own version of that, standing between something you want to do and yourself. And maybe you, like me, have been trying to resolve and clear the energy before doing the thing. But what I've realized throughout life is it doesn't work that way. Even Ralph Waldo Emerson was known to say, do the thing and you'll have the power. Not get the power first And then when you feel comfortable, go ahead and attempt the thing. It doesn't work that way. We have to do the thing to have the power. What's your thing that you've been waiting on the power to do? Now is the day to find your keys, start the engine, and go to class and do the thing. And you know what? It might be tough. It might be tough. It was tough for me the first like 8 months of going to class, honestly, because I was new at it. But after a while, you have these moments where you start to realize your progress. And they come almost like in relation to the diminishment of those blocks. So it's like this inverse relationship that's kind of beneficial when you understand that there's likely to be this type of resistance between you and anything you want to do, whether it's a hobby, like for me, it's not like dire that I train jujitsu, or it's between you and love, between you and the career you deserve. A lot of times, the same energy is there, but the more you go out there and try to maybe approach women or men or whatever it is, and the more you get rejected, the more that fear goes away, and the better you get at talking to people and breaking the ice and making good conversations. And before you know it, you've broken free. But there was no wizardry, no mysterious astrological, phenomena happening. It's just a matter of you standing up to that freaking boogeyman and going out and getting what's yours, no matter how you feel. Number 4 is remembering and seeing in your own way that you're not alone, that you've never been alone. And even when the sun is hidden behind the clouds, it's still there, just as your divine guidance is. And we can go through periods like this where it kind of comes and goes. You may have noticed that, where your divine guidance sometimes seems like, okay, there it is. Life is much easier when it's there and I have access to it. There's a sense of guidance. There's a sense of confidence in the moves you make. And you can really easily discern, the various decisions you make in life and the steps you take. It seems very like clear and inspired. And then there are times when it's like that guidance system is completely gone. And then you're vulnerable now to the elements, because you're just like this one little person in this big, crazy, random, chaotic world that it's especially challenging right now for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. It doesn't look too good for humanity right now, and here you are cut off from the only thing that allows you to have any sense of, like safety. But a lot of times what I found is that happens and then it comes back, as it always does, but it comes back stronger. It reminds me, one day I came into my very office here to write an email, and I opened up my computer and I got this little message that said, what did it say? It was like a software update. Click OK to do the software update. And so I did. And I had to close down the computer. It shut it down. And then when it came back up, everything was better, apparently. It seems to be similar, that we go through our own little software updates. And then, but when we rev back up and spirit comes back, it's, whoa. Not only are we grateful for its return, oh my God, I can't believe I ever doubted you, but it's like stronger. You understand it more. Also, the down times, that's kind of like an opportunity to really do the inner work, the shadow exploration. Because once the light seems to disappear, that's when the shadows come out, and it's like, oh, But then we deal with them, because that's what we do. We're resilient. We don't just give up. You're watching this video, you obviously have some hope. You haven't given up yet. However old you are, you're still here. Whatever you've been through, you're here chilling out, listening to this on your phone or whatever, because that's your nature. So the same thing, when God or whatever source disappears and our shadow comes out to haunt us and mess with us, initially it's like, oh God, why is this happening? But we deal with it. We learn, we grow, we expand, we heal, we understand, and we become stronger. And then the source comes back even stronger, and then we're like this powerful duo. And that's what this new moon is. It's kind of like, it's like the source coming back. you may relate with what I'm saying. You may have felt cut off for a little while here, not sure where your life is heading, but this is a time of the light returning and you remembering that you've always been guided and that all the different things, even you getting cut off and feeling confused and maybe the challenges you face, all of it is part of this brilliant plan, this brilliant orchestration of your evolution and your life. All of it, all the pieces, they have a role to play. And this is a time of realizing that and seeing that. And then, it'll probably go again and we'll have to go through our process, but it's a good time to, in your own way, like be reminded and have your own validation experience of really like like the fullness of what it is to be a human being. It's more than just this random bag of flesh and synapses and bones and organs and our brain. It's like that, but it's also something else. There's this intelligence that all of us are connected to and an extension of. And these are just words I'm sharing, but this new moon is a way that the energy is ripe for you to kind of have your own understanding of that. And then finally, number 5 is more of like a collective thing, I would say. I don't talk about the collective happenings all that often. I try to keep it to the individual journey, but what does seem to be happening is, as Bashar says, if you ever know, Bashar, he's the awesome channeler. The train tracks are splitting, he says. What that means is like there are different realities available to us all now. And we are given a lot of opportunity to kind of decide which train, so to speak, we would like to be on. And there's like 2 fundamental ones, it is said. One is like that of expansion and evolution, but what comes with that is the healing and the chaos, the dark nights of the soul, which you're also familiar with. And then there's the one of just sort of like staying the same, continuing to play the same game, the same karmic game humans have been playing this entire time. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't have to be that way. And right now is a time where you might start to really realize that you can kind of do what you want. There's now like more flexibility and the ability to really like solidify the train you want to be on. And it's interesting because the former train feels familiar. Playing out our games of limitation, as an example, it's painful and we're waking up to just how painful and like limiting it is. At the same time, there's this sense of like familiarity with it, which makes it kind of attractive. But then there's this other one taking us, towards our big lofty dreams, challenging us to constantly take leaps of faith and step outside of our comfort zone and confront our darkness. But either one is going fairly quickly now, it feels like. And it's a time to really like commit to the train you want to be on. And what I mean by that exactly, it's like commit to your dream. Whatever it is, as crazy as it might sound, you might be surprised at how fast that train is going and how quickly and divinely, brilliantly you get there. This other train is full of synchronicity and insight and personal development and the right opportunity happening at the right time. Brilliant ideas coming to you when you least expect it, revealing exactly how to get to that amazing dream of yours. And by the way, if you're watching this video, you already know what train you're on. So just remember that. Remember your power. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast the other day about extraterrestrials. And there's this person who, the director of that new film that came out, The Age of Disclosure. And he said that somebody he was talking to this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I believe it, who stumbled upon a dying extraterrestrial that had crashed here. This person said that he could hear the ET's thoughts. And what the extraterrestrial was sort of communicating through telepathy to this guy who just stumbled upon him was this. It was that you humans are not aware of your full potential. And right now, this new moon is all of the cards are pointing to us really proving that extraterrestrial wrong. because we are in the process and have been in the process of realizing our power, going in and out of this divine connectedness, going into the murkiness of our shadows, conquering our fears with courage, and living to tell about it, with the notches on our belt to sort of remind us of how far we've come. And now is a time where this train is going very quickly, and you can use all your growth to an incredible advantage and in a very accelerated way, move yourself to the life and the situation and the state of consciousness that you've been working for and that you deserve.